We touched down near dusk, just high enough to feel the fog brush our helmets as we roped in. The forest swallowed sound quick. Rotor noise faded to a low hum, then nothing. Only the smell of wet bark and salt drifted through. I could see the glow of the coast miles west, a faint orange behind the ridges. We were supposed to be invisible. No patches, no names. Just 6 of us in Forest Service Nomex with our rifles packed neat and quiet. The bird that dropped us was gone before we checked comms. Even our call sign sounded fake, something about a burn team recon. The job was simple on paper: find the downed drone, recover its payload, wipe what we couldn't carry, and disappear before dawn. The map put the crash at the mouth of a hollow deeper than it looked from above. The canopy ran tight, older than the road grid. As we moved in, the smell changed cedar first, then something faintly chemical, dry and bitter. That was the first sign the forest wasn't empty. Before we start the video, hit the subscribe button to support the channel. It only takes a second. Thank you. We were part of a temporary tasking cell based out of Eureka. 6 men from different units, patched together for an assignment that didn't exist in paperwork. Officially, we were attached to the Department of Forestry as wildfire survey consultants. In reality, we were special forces working under a quiet interagency group that liked to operate without flags or questions. Our lead, Captain Rowe, was a tall man who'd done too many tours to care about medals. He spoke little and expected the same. The rest of us filled our usual spread communications, intel, demolitions, and medic. I handled engineering and mapping. We'd worked together before in Afghanistan, clearing mountain passes that weren't supposed to exist. This time, the terrain wasn't foreign, but it felt no less hostile. The call came on a Friday afternoon. We were told a research drone operated by a defense contractor had gone missing over protected land near the northern Redwood Belt. Its sensors, they said, had classified potential. Our job was recovery before the public found it. No locals, no reports, no questions. The script was clean, too clean. We left before dark, driving north in unmarked trucks through Arcata and into fog. The road curved between giant trunks that blotted out the evening sky. Even with headlights on low, the light just vanished into the mist. By the time we reached the trailhead, the temperature had dropped almost 10 degrees. The Night Stalker bird arrived without lights. The pilot gave us a curt nod, then disappeared behind the fog. It felt like stepping into a soundproof box. Every boof hole vanished under the weight of damp soil. My headset crackled once and died. We followed a ridge east, cutting through old logging routes that hadn't seen trucks in years. The smell of cedar was strong, thick with moisture. But beneath it was another scent, dry, metallic, and faintly sharp, like the air after a transformer burns. The medic said it was ozone. The comms man said it wasn't natural. No one replied. 2 hours in, we reached the first grid coordinate. The drone's transponder had gone dark there, right above a valley carved by a thin creek. Our GPS wobbled between readings, sometimes placing us a mile west, sometimes east. Rowe called for a stop. We checked our altimeters. All read 20 meters lower than they should have for that ridge. Not a big deal by itself, but enough to make Rowe narrow his eyes. We set a short rest. The fog thickened, rolling low between the trunks. The night was quiet except for the slow shift of branches overhead. Now and then a trunk popped somewhere in the distance, the sound deep and hollow. It echoed without direction. When we moved again, Rowe had us in staggered line formation, rifles ready but low. He didn't say why, but the tension ran through the group like current. By the time we reached the second coordinate, I could tell we weren't alone. Not by sound there was none, but by how the air seemed heavier, like walking underwater. The comms man tried to raise signal again, static. Then a few clipped words came through, package not secure. The voice was ours, but not from anyone in our group. We froze. The medic scanned the perimeter. I checked the frequencies. Nothing but silence. Rowe made a note on his map, folded it, and said one word, move. We continued east, deeper into the valley where the signal had first cut out. It was nearly midnight when we saw the wreck. The wreck sat at the base of a narrow slope, half buried in soft earth. From a distance, it looked like a broken tree trunk, silver skin glinting through the moss. The closer we got, the clearer it became that the crash wasn't random. The drone had come down in a straight descent, as if guided. Its wings were intact, nose sheared clean, and every wire clipped by hand. Rowe signaled halt. We spread out to secure the perimeter. The medic checked for heat residue, but his scanner stayed cold. No fire, no scorch marks, no wildlife tracks around it. The air smelled like damp metal and cedar, heavy but still. The black case that should have been strapped to the drone's belly was gone. Only the harness remained, sliced neat. Whoever pulled it had done it fast and quiet. I searched for prints but found only flattened fern and soft indentations where boots had pressed deep, then disappeared toward the creek bed. We followed the trail a short way until it vanished in wet sand. Roe crouched beside the water, dipped his gloved fingers in, and frowned. The stream ran cloudy, tinged with something oily that caught the moonlight in dull rainbows. He sniffed it once and said nothing. The comms man tried his headset again. This time it connected, but not to base. The signal bounced back, a voice repeating coordinates from the opposite ridge, the same coordinates we had been given for pickup tomorrow night. Then it cut off. We regrouped around the wreck. Roe told us to start a scan for secondary debris. The medic and I swept uphill, moving slow between the redwoods. The forest floor felt springy underfoot, the roots twisting like buried rope. Fog drifted past in thin sheets. Once or twice I thought I saw light moving between trunks, pale and narrow, but every time I turned, it was gone. When we came back, Roe was kneeling beside a small dugout hole near the wreck. Inside lay a broken phone, the civilian kind. Its casing was scraped clean of numbers. The battery was missing and the SIM slot had been soldered shut. Someone had buried it intentionally. That confirmed it. Someone else had reached the drone before us. We cleared the area and set a cold camp a few hundred meters upslope, close enough to watch but far enough to stay unseen. The medic fixed a small tarp between fallen trunks and worked on the knee injury from insertion. Swelling had spread, but the man refused morphine. Said he wanted to stay clear. I took first watch. The forest was too quiet. Even wind didn't reach this deep. I could hear my own heartbeat under the gear straps. At some point, I caught a faint glow through the fog, white, steady, not fire. It hung low for maybe half a minute, then slid sideways and vanished. An hour later, Roe joined me. He didn't ask what I'd seen. He just watched the slope and said softly, "We're not the only retrieval team out here." He was right. The next morning, we found fresh sign along the creek boot prints that matched ours in pattern but not spacing. Whoever made them moved lighter, faster. A line of twine hung between two trees ahead, looped through an empty energy gel pack like a marker. Roe took one look and said we'd follow, but only till midday. If we didn't find the case, we'd pull to high ground and signal for exfil. We couldn't risk crossing another unit without authorization. By noon, fog burned off just enough for sunlight to cut through. The prints led us toward an old road grade, overgrown and slick. Halfway down, the medic stopped and pointed. Fresh tire marks, small, like from an ATV. They went the same direction as the prints. That road ended at a clearing ringed by tall redwoods. In the center sat a small tent made from camo netting and forest debris. It was empty, but the soil inside was still warm. Next to it lay a small plastic tag with faded numbers and the logo of the same contractor that built the drone. No sign of the case. No sign of anyone. Roe picked up the tag, turned it in his hand, and said one quiet sentence. "We're being shadowed by our own." Then he dropped it into his pocket and told us to pack. We started moving again east this time, toward the ridge that marked the next comms window. The forest around us had changed. It wasn't just quiet anymore. It felt like it was listening. The ridge we climbed that afternoon was steep, slick with rain, and thick with undergrowth that clawed at our sleeves. Moving uphill took time. Every few steps the fog would thin, then fold back, hiding everything again. It made distances lie. You could swear something was 10 meters away and then find out it was 50. We stopped often, not to rest, but to listen. There was no bird noise, no wind, not even the creak of branches. The forest carried a kind of pressure, as if holding its breath. Roe walked ahead, checking his map every few minutes. The coordinates we'd been given for recovery were less than 2 kilometers away now, but none of us expected it to be that simple. Every sign told us someone else was working the same ground. The comms man caught a faint digital burst on our net, short, clean, nothing random. It came from almost the same heading we were moving toward. That meant whoever they were ahead of us. By late afternoon, we came to an old fire road washed out by winter storms. Tire ruts crossed it, shallow but fresh. A spent smoke canister lay near a stump, the military kind, burned down halfway and cold. Roe crouched, ran his fingers through the mud, and pointed to a single fiber stuck there, orange Nomex thread, same as ours. It hadn't been there long. We set up a low perimeter in the trees above the road and waited. The plan was to observe until dark, then move. No one spoke much. The medic wrapped his knee and checked his carbine like it was something that could steady his breathing. I took readings on the altimeter. It dipped again, just like before, showing lower than it should for our height. I logged it out of habit and said nothing. When the fog rolled in again, we shifted positions closer to the clearing. The trees there had burn marks on one side, black streaks reaching up 10 feet, but the soil below them was wet and clean. No fire had burned here in years. It looked more like heat from above had kissed the bark, precise and narrow. Ro decided we'd stay until dawn. We dug in under a fallen log, mud slick under our elbows, rain starting to fall in slow, steady drops. Around midnight, the comms man whispered that he picked up another signal. 2 bursts, then silence. It wasn't ours. He logged the frequency, low band, same encryption base we used during field exercises. Ro told him to shut it down and said nothing else. When light came, it was a dull gray spread across the fog. We moved again, following the tire ruts east. The road began to slope downward into thicker growth where the air smelled of damp moss and something faintly sour, like fuel left open too long. The medic noticed it first, said it reminded him of jet exhaust on a cold morning. It lingered even as we pushed deeper. Half a kilometer later, we found a clearing carved into the slope. An old piece of machinery sat there, half a logging winch, rusted and overgrown. It looked harmless until I saw the clean cuts across its cables, sharp and recent. Someone had used the frame to anchor a rope system. A few scraps of webbing still hung there, gray with mud but unfrayed. Under the winch, the soil had been turned, like something heavy had been buried or lifted out. Ro told us to fan out. The medic uncovered a small battery casing, newer than the winch and stamped with the same contractor's logo from the tag we found earlier. They put the pieces together, the missing drone case, the fuel smell, and the silent comms traffic. The contractor's own recovery team was here, and they weren't supposed to be. We packed the evidence and pushed forward toward the final coordinate. The fog started to thin. Light filtered through the branches in narrow columns, catching on droplets and web strands. The ground softened underfoot. My boots sank into something that looked like mud but clung like clay. When I pulled it free, a faint shimmer followed, like oil on water. It wasn't natural. The medic leaned down, touched it with a stick, then shook his head. "Chemical," he said quietly. "Old or new, I can't tell." We kept moving. Half an hour later, we reached the final grid. It sat in a hollow ringed by redwoods so tall the tops disappeared into fog. The ground there was unnaturally smooth, covered in fine gray silt. No underbrush, no sound. The air felt still and dense. The comms man tried his radio again, and this time it came alive with a whisper of static. He turned the dial, eyes narrowing. A voice cut through flat, calm, repeating our own call sign. Ro gave the hand signal to shut it off. The comms man obeyed, but the voice didn't stop. It kept coming, faint but clear, same tone, same words. Then it changed, adding a sentence that made every one of us freeze. "Stand by for recovery." The voice was Ro's. For a long second, no one moved. Then he said very quietly, "We move now." We left the hollow fast, climbing toward the opposite ridge without looking back. The forest behind us stayed quiet, but the air carried a faint hum that faded only when we reached higher ground. From the ridge, we could see a narrow line of light through the trees far below, moving slow like someone sweeping a torch side to side. Then it blinked out. That night, we made camp without fire. Nobody slept. By dawn, we were already moving again. The fog had thinned, leaving streaks of sunlight sliding through the branches. The quiet from the night before still held, the kind that makes you listen harder for what's missing. Rose set a hard pace, cutting through thick brush instead of following the slope. No one complained. Everyone wanted distance between us and that hollow. 2 hours in, the medic called for a break. His injured leg had worsened, swelling under the brace. He still refused painkillers. Ro crouched beside him, said nothing, just adjusted the straps tighter and nodded for us to continue. It wasn't cruelty, it was focus. We were close to something, and he could feel it too. The terrain began to change. The redwoods gave way to smaller trees, their trunks dark and slick. Moss grew thick enough to hide rock edges. The smell in the air shifted again, less of earth, more of burnt resin. It carried a faint sweetness that didn't belong in the forest. The comms man stopped to take another signal reading, but the meter only blinked static lines. No rhythm or pattern this time, just white noise that pulsed like breath through the headphones. He shut it off fast and didn't look back. We hit a creek crossing where the soil had been churned by boots. Tracks ran both ways, at least 3 sets, maybe 4. All wore the same tread pattern issue soles, government make. But mixed among them was a smaller, lighter print, barefoot, not animal. Not any of ours. The medic stared at it longer than he needed to, then finally said, "That's fresh." The prince led across the creek toward a stretch of fallen trunks. We followed, rifles low. The light dimmed again under a thicker stand of redwoods. Every sound softened, like being inside a cave. Halfway through the trunks, the air grew colder. I could see my breath. Rose stopped us and pointed toward the far end of the grove. Something metallic gleamed under a mat of fallen needles. We cleared it carefully. It was a section of the missing drone's fuselage, snapped clean, with a deep dent on one side. Inside the cavity were torn wires and a streak of dried mud mixed with something darker, almost black, but not oil. The medic scraped a bit of it with his knife. "Coagulated," he said. "Like blood, but not from any mammal I know." None of us wanted to test it. Ro told us to photograph it and move. But as we packed, the comms man picked up movement on thermal 3 shapes, 50 meters out, closing slow. The fog was too thick to see. Ro gave the hand signal for silence and motioned us into cover. We waited. The shape stopped. The thermal feed blurred, then blanked. A faint smell drifted in, stronger now, burnt resin mixed with something metallic, like hot wires after a power surge. My throat went dry. Ro gestured to shift position, and that's when a voice came through the trees. It wasn't shouted. It was spoken low, almost conversational. "Stand down." Same tone, same pitch as before. His voice again. I saw him freeze. His eyes tracked the fog, then flicked to us. "It's not me," he whispered. The fog thinned enough to reveal movement, a figure standing still between 2 trunks, not in uniform. Wearing gray coveralls, head tilted slightly, face half hidden by shadow. He didn't move toward us. Didn't raise a weapon, just stood there watching. Ro aimed, but before he could call the shot, the figure turned sideways and stepped back into the mist. Gone in one movement. The medic swore under his breath. Ro lowered his rifle. "We keep going," he said. The ridge beyond the grove opened into another clearing, wider and brighter, sunlight breaking through. In the center was a stack of crates half buried in leaves. The markings had been scraped off, but one side still showed faint numbers. Same format as the contractor's fuel modules. Ro pried the top one open with his knife. Inside were drive sleds, small and flat like hard disks. Every single one was empty. That confirmed it. The data had been pulled. The drone was just a distraction. Someone had set this whole recovery in motion to cover something else entirely. Ro closed the lid and looked toward the tree line. "We're leaving," he said, voice low but steady. "They can have whatever's left." We began the ascent toward the extraction ridge. The forest brightened slightly, and for the first time in hours, I thought I heard birds again. But halfway up, a single crack echoed from below. Not a gunshot, not wood. It sounded like a heavy door slamming far underground. We turned, but the forest behind us was still. No light, no movement. Just the faint scent of resin lingering in the air. By the time we reached the top, our radios came alive again. Base was calling for confirmation. Ro answered with a short phrase, "Recovery unsuccessful." Moving to exfil. The voice that came back didn't belong to our handler. It said only, "Copy that. Proceed to alternate site." No one asked what alternate site meant. We followed orders. As we moved out, I glanced back one last time. The fog was closing again, swallowing the clearing below. Through it, just for a moment, I saw the faint outline of that same gray figure standing among the redwoods, still watching. Then the light shifted and the forest swallowed everything. By the time we reached the alternate site, the sun was dropping behind the canopy, turning the fog gold. The GPS put us near an old ranger outpost that had been abandoned years ago. The structure was small, a one-room cabin with a tin roof half caved in. The forest had already started reclaiming it. Ferns grew through the cracks in the floorboards, and the windows were filmed with moss. Ro ordered a perimeter sweep before we entered. The medic stayed back with the injured man, while the rest of us cleared inside. There was nothing but rotted lumber and a half-burned desk. A stack of empty ration tins sat in one corner. All of them had been opened clean with a blade, not a can opener. That detail stuck with me. Whoever had used this place was efficient, not desperate. The comms man set up the long-range unit on a flat patch outside, running a line to the generator pack. The frequency list had been updated in our orders, so he cycled through the new ones. Static at first, then a faint carrier tone, clean and constant. It shouldn't have been there. He checked again, scanning higher bands, but the tone followed him up the spectrum like it was tied to the set. He switched the rig off. The tone stayed. Ro leaned over, listening. It wasn't a sound you could describe. more like pressure against the ear, the kind that builds when altitude changes fast. It came from nowhere and everywhere, low enough to feel in the chest. The medic called from outside. "We've got movement in the trees." Rose signaled everyone down. We took positions along the window line. Through the fog, shapes moved between trunks, slow, deliberate. There was no light, no gear noise, just motion. I raised my scope and caught one silhouette before it vanished. The shape was wrong. Too narrow in the shoulders, head tilted forward like it was listening. Roe whispered for the comms man to log the sighting, but when he looked down, his recorder screen was already blank. Every file had been wiped. Power still ran, storage empty. That was when the air shifted. It wasn't wind. It was the temperature dropping so fast that our breath turned white in seconds. The metal on my rifle went slick with condensation. The medic tried to radio Roe, but his mic crackled once, then spat a voice hours again, from earlier recovery unsuccessful, moving to X-file. The message looped. The voice tone never changed. Roe's jaw tightened. He looked toward the door, then back at the medic. "We're leaving," he said. But before we could move, something slammed into the side of the cabin hard enough to shake the roof. Boards splintered. Dust rained down. No gunfire followed, no footsteps. Just one hit, then silence. We fanned out fast, covering the perimeter. Nothing moved outside. The shapes were gone. Even the fog had drawn back, leaving a wide ring of clear air around the cabin, like the forest itself had stopped breathing. Roe pulled the case from his pack, the small sealed unit we had recovered near the crates. He set it on the floor, opened the outer latch, and stared. Inside wasn't the fuel cell. It was a second recorder core, smaller, black, and marked with a string of numbers that didn't match the drone manifest. The comms man bent close. "That's not ours," he said. Roe didn't respond. He just stared at it, then closed the latch. "Pack up," he said. "We're burning the site." We moved fast. The medic prepped thermite strips along the cabin walls. I rigged the spare fuel cans under the desk. As we worked, the tone in the air grew louder, almost physical now, pressing against our skulls. The injured man started shaking. Blood trickled from his nose, then stopped as suddenly as it started. Roe gave the signal. We lit the strips and moved out. The cabin caught in seconds, fire blooming orange against the fog. No smoke rose, just heat, pure and dry. As we climbed the slope away from the clearing, I looked back once. Through the flames, I saw figures standing beyond the light line, gray, still, almost human in outline. They didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't fade. They just watched until the fire collapsed the roof. The forest swallowed them as it had everything else. We didn't speak again until we reached the extraction ridge. By then, the comms were dead, the GPS frozen, and the temperature back to normal. The air smelled only of cedar. Rose stopped, turned to us, and said quietly, "Whatever was in that case, it wasn't built for us." Then he started walking, and no one followed too close. We moved through the next stretch in silence, following a ridgeline that should have led north toward the highway, but the compass disagreed. Every reading pulled west, deeper into the woods. The map was useless now. Landmarks didn't match. The trees grew thicker, the bark darker, almost black in places, as if burned from within. The medic said the air felt charged, like before lightning. He wasn't wrong. My skin prickled under the gear. By midday, we found what looked like an old survey trail. Concrete markers jutted from the ground, each stamped with a number half worn away. They were spaced perfectly apart, too even for natural erosion. We followed them until they stopped at a clearing where the earth dipped into a narrow trench. A rusted steel hatch lay half buried at the end. It was cold to the touch. No hinges, no markings, just a single seam running down the middle. Roe knelt beside it, brushing off soil. He didn't tell us to open it. He just stared, lost somewhere in his own thoughts. Then he said quietly, "This isn't on any grid." The comms man ran a frequency sweep again. Nothing but the same low pulse, softer now, steady as a heartbeat. It wasn't static anymore, it had rhythm. He recorded 10 seconds before the signal died completely. When he checked the file, the recorder had renamed it by itself. Just one word, Redwood. That was the first time I saw Roe hesitate. He ordered a perimeter and told us to dig a shallow pit for a quick camp. We were too exposed to stay long, but the medic's leg had worsened. He could barely move. While the others unpacked rations, I walked a short distance downslope needing air. From there, I could see fog drifting low through the trunks, moving against the wind. It flowed toward us, not past. When I came back, Roe was on the radio. His tone was low, deliberate, package secure. containment unstable. He paused, listening. No, we're not compromised yet. He caught my look and ended the call. Private channel, he said flatly, though none of us had private lines on this op. I didn't push, but from that moment, whatever trust we had left began to thin. At dusk, the comms man noticed light flickers near the hatch, thin flashes under the seam, like something breathing below. We backed off. Rowe ordered no one to touch it. The medic whispered that the smell in the air had changed again, like copper and heat. I could taste it too. We stayed through the night, each of us taking shifts that felt longer than they should have. No one slept. The forest around us pulsed faintly, slow and deliberate, as if echoing the hum from below. Just before dawn, the comms man picked up a new signal, faint and broken. Extraction point, 2 clicks north, verify package. The voice didn't match any handler. It was flat, mechanical, repeating every 12 seconds. Rowe looked at the medic, then at the rest of us. That's our only way out, he said. We packed fast. The hatch we'd found stayed shut behind us. But as we left the clearing, I turned once and saw it. The soil around the meadow was moving, not shifting, not cracking, breathing. We didn't speak again until the first light touched the treetops. The extraction coordinates led straight back toward the hollow, where we'd found the wreck. Whatever waited there, it had called us twice now. We reached the hollow just after noon. The fog hadn't lifted, but the light had changed. It came from everywhere, not from the sun. It made shadows vanish. The ground where the wreck had been was clean now, every trace gone. Even the soil looked fresh, turned and leveled like someone had swept the forest floor. Rose stood in the center, turning in slow circles. The medic leaned against the tree, his leg almost useless now. None of us spoke. We were waiting for something we couldn't name. Then the air went still, not quiet still. Even our breathing felt muffled. The comms unit in the pack crackled once, and the voice came through again. Extraction 2 clicks north. Verify package. Same words, same tone, only louder now, sharper, as if whoever or whatever it was had moved closer. Rowe looked at us. We finish it here. He set the recovered case on the ground and opened it. Inside, the black recorder we'd found near the cabin blinked with a red light. It hadn't done that before. The medic stepped closer and froze. The display on his handheld pulse reader flashed at the same rhythm as the light in the case. Rowe snapped the lid shut. Destroy it, the comms man said. Rowe shook his head. Not yet. Before anyone could argue, the trees around the hollow shuddered. It wasn't wind. It was deeper, heavier like the ground itself shifting. Birds burst from the canopy for the first time in hours, then disappeared again. A long, low groan rolled through the valley, too even to be natural. Something was rising from the soil at the edge of the clearing. Not a person, not an animal. The earth itself bulged upward in a slow arc, cracking as it lifted. Beneath it, metal gleamed, curved, smooth, the same steel color as the drone's skin. Rowe shouted for cover. We moved to the tree line, weapons ready, but no target presented itself. The mound split open in the middle, soil sliding down like sand. Inside was a hollow cavity lined with panels, slick and dark. In the center of that cavity was another case identical to ours, but older, dirt-stained, and still blinking faint red. Rowe didn't wait. He ran to it, tore it free, and hauled it into the open. As soon as he lifted it, the hum stopped. The silence that followed felt like the world had stopped breathing. Then the radio spoke again. This time, it wasn't the same calm voice. It was Rowe's own, clear and sharp, coming from the case in his hands. Containment failure, do not recover. He froze. So did we. The echo came again, softer, do not recover. The comms man raised his weapon. That's a loop, he said, voice tight. It's playing back field traffic. Rowe didn't move. His eyes were locked on the device. No, he said quietly. That's live. He took a step back, clutching the case. The medic limped forward, trying to reach him. Captain, drop it, he said. You don't know what that thing's doing. Rowe's knuckles whitened. He looked around at the trees, at the light bleeding through the fog, then at the rest of us. This is why they sent us, he said. Not the drone, not the data. This. The earth trembled again, harder this time. Cracks split the soil where the metal had surfaced. Steam or something like it poured out, thick and colorless. It carried the same faint copper smell we'd noticed before. Rowe opened the case again, staring into the light. If they wanted it buried, they should have buried me with it, he said. Then he reached inside. The moment his hand touched the core, the light flared white. The blast wasn't loud, but it hit hard enough to drop all of us flat. The air vanished, sucked out, and returned in one violent pull. When I looked up, Ro was gone. Only the case remained, split open, empty, the soil around it glowing faintly as if lit from below. The medic crawled forward, hand trembling, but the glow faded before he reached it. The ground settled. The air went cold again. The comms man looked at me, eyes wide. "We have to move." I nodded. But for the first time since insertion, I had no idea which direction led out. Every ridge looked the same, every trunk identical. The forest had folded in on itself. We chose the slope that felt least wrong and started walking. We didn't stop moving for almost an hour, climbing through the wet dark until our legs felt hollow. The forest seemed endless now, no breaks in the canopy, no rise in the ground to orient by. The fog thickened until even our boots disappeared beneath it. The medic stumbled often, his breath short and wet, the smell of iron clinging to him. He kept muttering that Ro wasn't dead, that no man vanished like that without leaving a mark. I wanted to tell him to stop talking, but the truth was, I half believed him. The air still felt charged, the way it does after lightning strikes close. When we finally broke through to a ridge, the fog below glowed faintly red. I thought it was sunset until I realized the light came from the ground itself, pulsing in rhythm with something buried deep. The comms man tried to radio base, but the unit wouldn't even power up. He opened the battery case, cursed softly, and showed me the screen. The metal contacts had melted smooth, as if exposed to heat. There had been no heat. The medic sat hard on a rock and started laughing under his breath, a dry sound that didn't fit his face. He pulled off his glove and pointed down toward the valley. "It's still there," he said. "Rose light." We watched the glow shift and stretch, bleeding through the fog like veins. Then it began to move uphill toward us. Not fast, but steady. Every few seconds, the trees ahead of it bent, as though something massive passed beneath their roots. The hum returned, low and steady, vibrating in our ribs. We backed away, step by step. The comms man dropped his pack to move faster, but the medic stayed put, staring at the light with a calm I didn't understand. He said, "We were never here for a drone, were we?" I told him to get up. He didn't. He looked right at me and said, "This was always a retrieval. We just never asked what we were retrieving." Then the light reached the ridge. It wasn't fire. It wasn't any color I knew. It bent around the trees without touching them, moving like liquid but soundless. The medic stood as it reached him, and for a second I saw his face clearly in the glow. His eyes looked empty, not dead, not alive, just gone somewhere else. He stepped forward once and was gone. No scream. No flash. Just absence. The light shrank, then folded in on itself until the ridge went dark again. I grabbed the comms man and pulled him back down the slope, running blind through the fog. The hum faded behind us, replaced by wind for the first time in days. I didn't stop until the trees thinned enough to show open sky. Ahead, in a break of the ridge, a helicopter hovered low. It had no markings, no tail numbers, just a white body and a narrow black stripe. A figure stood in the open door, waving us forward. I couldn't tell who it was until the light from the rotors hit his face. It was Ro. He didn't look burned or shaken. He didn't even look tired, just calm, almost peaceful. He motioned for us to climb aboard. I stopped a few steps short. The comms man went first, pulling himself in. Ro reached out to help him, and for a moment, their hands met. Then Ro leaned close, said something I couldn't hear over the rotor wash, and the comms man nodded once. I climbed in last. The moment my boots left the ground, the pilot lifted us clear of the ridge. As we rose, I looked down and saw the hollow again, perfectly circular, glowing faintly beneath the trees. The redwoods around it stood perfectly still. Ro sat opposite me, staring out the open door, hands folded on his lap. The case was gone. No one spoke for the entire flight. When we finally broke out over the coast, the radio crackled alive for the first time in hours. A voice came through, calm and official. "Recovery complete. Proceed to debrief." I looked at Ro, but he didn't react. He just kept watching the forest fade behind us until the coastline swallowed the horizon. I never saw the medic again. The comms man didn't report after we landed. The helicopter crew vanished before I could read their tags. Ro walked straight into the hangar without looking back. That was the last time I saw him. They took me straight from the landing pad to a windowless room that smelled like bleach and cold metal. No clocks, no insignia, nothing on the walls. Just the table and 2 chairs. My rifle was gone, my pack too. They didn't even ask for my name, just said, "Sit, wait, and drink the water." I didn't. The cup smelled like old plastic. After a while, two men came in. Plain clothes, no badges. One carried a folder, the other watched. They asked about the crash, the case, Roe, and the others. I told them what I could, which wasn't much that made sense. They wrote nothing down. When I mentioned the figures in the woods, their faces didn't change. When I said Roe was alive, they nodded like they already knew. They kept me there for what felt like hours, maybe days. The lights never changed. Meals came irregular, sometimes 2 a day, sometimes none. The man with the folder would ask the same question over and over, what happened in the hollow. I said it was empty when we arrived. He'd nod, then ask again the next day. Eventually, they stopped coming. A guard led me out through a back corridor, handed me a sealed envelope, and pointed toward a jeep waiting in the lot. The envelope held discharge papers dated a week earlier than the mission. According to them, I hadn't been deployed at all. My signature was already on the bottom. They drove me south, dropped me near Crescent City, and told me I was free to go. No gear, no ID, just the clothes I had. The driver never looked at me, not once. For a while I stayed near the coast, sleeping in motels and trying to piece together what had happened. The comms man's name was gone from every roster. The medic's records listed him as deceased from training injuries months before the mission. Roe's personnel file was blank. The contractor tied to the drone had dissolved quietly the following week. I wrote a report on my own, sent it through secure channels to the address we use for debriefs. It came back unopened, stamped recipient invalid. After that, I stopped trying. Weeks passed before I slept without dreaming of that light under the soil. Sometimes I'd wake up smelling that same copper tang, like the air before a storm. I'd tell myself it was nothing. Still, I'd check my phone for missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Sometimes there'd be one, no message, just silence when I picked up. The forest never left me. In quiet moments, I'd hear it again, not sound exactly, more like pressure behind the ears, a faint hum that faded if I moved too fast. I'd catch myself turning toward it, waiting for something to speak through it. Nothing ever did. When the nightmares faded, I thought I was done with it. Then one night, I turned on the news. There'd been a wildfire in Humboldt County near the old growth reserves. Firefighters reported a sinkhole forming under the ridge, perfect circle, no ignition source found. Locals said the trees fell inward, not out. The report ended quick, no follow-up later. I knew where it was. The coordinates matched our extraction point exactly. For a long time, I sat there staring at the screen, trying to decide if it was over or just starting again. The debrief ended months ago, but it never really ended. Every few weeks, someone new calls pretending to be from Veterans Affairs, asking about my service history. They never mentioned the retrieval. Once I asked one of them about Roe. The line went silent, then clicked off. After that, I stopped answering numbers I didn't know. I moved inland, found work maintaining forest trails, far from any base or contractor site. The quiet helped for a while, but every time the wind came through the trees a certain way, it carried that same hum, soft and low. I told myself it was only wind, but some nights it rises under the sound of rain, steady and pulsing, like it's following a pattern I can almost remember. A few days ago, a package arrived at the ranger station. No return address, just my last name typed on the label. Inside was a small black recorder, same make as the one from the hollow. It wasn't new. The edges were worn, the buttons stiff. There was a single file saved on it, untitled. When I played it, the sound was faint, full of static, but under it, for a few seconds, I heard Roe's voice. He said my name once, then whispered, "We never left." The file cut off. The recorder shut itself down. I buried it near the tree line that night, deep enough that I wouldn't see it again. Still, as I walked back toward the cabin, I could feel it in the air. The same hum, soft and waiting. I don't think the forest ever stopped listening. It's been years since the retrieval. Time should have dulled it, but memory doesn't fade the way it should. I still see the redwoods when I close my eyes, still smell the mix of cedar and metal, still feel that quiet weight in the air before the hum starts. I've tried to convince myself it was just the stress, that we imagined more than what was real, but the forest doesn't let you forget. Every man on that mission was erased on paper. I've checked. Their names lead nowhere. Their serials loop back into blank records. It's like we were scrubbed clean before we ever touched California soil. I used to think that meant we failed. Now I'm not sure. Maybe that's how success was supposed to look. Nothing left but silence. Sometimes, when the fog rolls in low and the ground trembles faintly underfoot, I catch that same pulse through the air, the same slow rhythm that carried through the hollow. I don't run anymore. I stand still and let it pass through me, waiting for it to fade. Maybe it's calling again. Maybe it never stopped. If anyone finds this account, stay clear of the ridge north of Crescent City. Some things in those woods are better left buried. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And for more amazing horror stories, just click the ones showing right now on your screen.